Good afternoon everyone, hope you're doing well and hope your summons for Raiden Shogun went well. I've got my Raiden and I built her up. We've got the weapon, we've got some artifacts, all the talents are as far as you can go. These are the constellations, and generally my Raiden looks pretty okay. It's only a crit damage which is a bit low, but I mean energy, recharge, electro damage bonus, all looking pretty good. So the question I want to answer today is, should we use Eula or Ayaka with the Raiden Shogun? And perhaps in a bit of a playtest, hopefully this will explain one of my concerns with using Eula instead of Ayaka. What I've done is since both my Eula and Ayaka are both triple crown C6, I just took away their weapons, otherwise they will just slap the premature Visha before we can even conclude the test. And what I'll do is we're just going to use Zhongli for a shield, but the pattern that I will use is I'll use Zhongli, then I'll switch into a character, cast their elemental skill, and then Q, and then go straight into the Raiden Shogun. So let's see what happens. So there's the E, there's the Q, and now we're in Raiden Shogun stance, and now we can do all sorts of damage and just sort of wreak havoc on this premature bishop. And there we go, and I'll just really get back to Ayaka, and you can see we're at about 60%. And what I just want to do now is just quickly get our elemental burst back up, and then we'll repeat the same with Eula. Let's just see. Okay, we've got it back up, so let's just get out. And there we go, and let's go to the back again. This should pretty much reset the entire fight. Yep. And now let's do the same. Going to cast our pillar, and now we're going to be here with Eula. So it's our elemental skill into Q, elemental skill again, trying to build as many stacks as we can. Luckily we're not going to be able to one-shot it as usual. Alright, then we go into Raiden Shogun. Please, you can just ignore the damage. I mean, it should be pretty similar for both of these, like Ayaka and Eula. And we're pretty much done here. And now if we go back into Eula, you can see she's got a bit less energy that she's regenerated. Now, let's assume just for the moment that whether you are using Eula or Ayaka, they both, like, let's say because of some other party members you had your elemental burst back up. The big problem is Eula took about 9 seconds of field time, whereas Ayaka could instantly switch off, which means we can do this, and then we can throw in another alt, which means we'll build resolve stacks a lot faster, and then the Raiden Shogun can absolutely destroy the enemy. The problem with using Eula is that you do not have this luxury. You can't build resolve stacks because she takes so much on-field time, and especially if you're now playing at a much higher level, like with higher constellations, you'll notice a couple of problems. The first thing is there's no way for you to really utilize constellation 2 with Eula, whereas with Ayaka you've got her C4, which essentially decreases the opponent's defense for 6 seconds. So if the last blade of Ayaka's ultimate hits, then that'll be 6 seconds, which will overlap into the Raiden Shogun's ultimate, that she can take sort of advantage of a very high defense reduction and do an insane amount of damage. The other thing is the Raiden Shogun, once she uses her ult, she gives her entire party like a 30% attack bonus for 10 seconds. So if at the end we had to use our Eula or our Ayaka and quickly build our elemental burst back up, well, Ayaka can get her Q back up, and since it's off cooldown, we can now fully take advantage of that, whereas with Eula we are going to be spending 9 seconds on the field, and we might there's a very high likelihood that you'll miss this attack buff. So suddenly you can see Raiden and Eula don't really play that well. The only good argument that a lot of people make is because of superconduct, but they ignore the fact that your superconduct is divided by 2 in the damage calculations, whereas the defense multipliers will actually give you, even if the defense multiplier goes from 0.7 to 0.8, that is way more of an attack increase than from 1.2 to 1.3 or 4. If you just look at the maths, The other problem is that Ayaka's got this fantastic ability that because she's off field, you can cast a lot more ultimates. As you saw there in the video, I casted Zhongli's ultimate, and let's say we had a Kujo Sorrow, I could cast her ultimate, build more resolve stacks for Baal, and then she can just hit even harder. Whereas you don't really get the luxury of Eula. So you might say, well, what about using this and then Eula? Well, the problem is you're not really very synergistic with Baal in this case. All you're going to be doing is you're not building any resolve stacks prior, you're not generating any elemental particles for your character, and you are not using the C6 to reduce the cooldown of your elemental bursts. So that is why you want to use your elemental bursts um, prior to switching into Baal. And if you play this correctly, and I think it'll be possible once Mycera is built up, but you should theoretically be able to constantly quick swap with Ayaka and keep up all the damage stacks, whereas with Eula I feel that you've got to almost snapshot all the damage and then go into Eula's ultimate and then do a big amount of damage. But then you don't really have the synergy that you have with Baal, because this C4 will not snapshot onto Eula, whereas someone like Bennett can snapshot with Eula a lot better, like a Bennett Kazuha. So that's just sort of my conclusion here. I think Ayaka, especially with the higher constellation levels, works a lot better. And you can ignore the damage numbers here, but they were pretty similar in terms of what both characters gave you, Ayaka and Eula. The only benefit is with Ayaka, even if you miss your elemental burst completely, you don't take any field time, so you can swap onto other characters, whereas with Eula, if you do miss your elemental burst, then that's very painful. So yeah, that is what I can say about this discussion. Let me know what you think. Personally, I will be using Ayaka and Raiden on the same team, and I'll use Eula on the other team, and that should be that should very evenly distribute out my damage. So yeah, that's it guys, cheers.